Welcome to the Couple to Couple League PeakDay Podcast, where we talk about fertility and natural family planning with our friends. Today's guests are Dave and Jen Brunsman. Dave and Jen, both graduates of Ball State University, were married in the summer of 2002 and headed to Los Angeles, so Dave could pursue a career in the film industry. While they were there, Dave and Jen underwent a deep conversion of faith, and Jen was received into the Catholic Church in 2012. The Brunsmans decided to move back to the Midwest, where Dave now works for his parish as the OCIA minister and video production manager. He also recently earned a master's degree in theology. Jen now teaches third grade, and they are both a teaching couple for Couple to Couple League. The Brunsmans are blessed with 4 children, and they all enjoy playing games or adventuring as a family on overnight backpacking trips. Thank you, Dave and Jen, for being on the PeakDay Podcast.
You're welcome.
So, let's just start at the beginning. Like, how did you meet?
We met in high school at band camp. Marching band.
Marching band. High school.
Yeah. I was a freshman and he was a junior.
Okay.
It was a hot day. And so we were like at high noon rehearsing in the band room, which was frigid. And all of a sudden a thunderstorm popped up and he realized that his car windows were down. And so he dashed outside to put the windows up and ran back in and was just a drenched rat. And so he sat down and he was in my row, but down, 15 or so seats. And I kind of caught his eye and I had an extra t-shirt and I asked him if he wanted it and he declined that. And then he asked for it. So
sure.
There we go.
And that brought us here today.
So can you tell us a little bit about your marriage prep and your engagement process?
So we got engaged right after I graduated college, and then our engagement lasted throughout Jen's last year and a half of college, and we got married right before we moved to LA. Mm-hmm. During our engagement, so our marriage prep, there wasn't a whole lot of prep that we did, but we did do an overnight or maybe a weekend retreat in Indianapolis.
I think it was Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday.
I think you're right. And it was a really good retreat, but it didn't really touch on the things that we talk about now in marriage prep here in Cincinnati.
Okay.
There were a lot of things that we talked about dealing with conflict and money management, how to deal with raising kids, things like that. But it didn't so much talk about like the Catholic understanding of sexuality. They talked about like how do you manage your sex life, but it didn't really talk about much outside of that.
So Dave, you were Catholic at the time, right? And Jen was not.
Correct. I was raised Methodist.
Okay.
I was technically Catholic at the time.
Okay. Yeah. All righty. And so as far as like natural family planning, was that mentioned? Was it required, not required? Yeah.
No, it wasn't.
So married, and then you just kind of immediately going off to Los Angeles for the next
6 weeks later.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Everything and drove across.
Yeah. And Dave, you were interested in the film industry, obviously.
That is the reason that we moved to LA. This had been one of those, I guess you'd call this the dream that I'd had for a long time since seeing E.T. back when I was a little kid.
Right.
I thought, wow, I want to go work in film.
Very cool.
But at the last minute, so I had this job at a bank, and at the last minute, my manager left. And then his manager offered me the job. And so I came home and I said, hey, Jen, so it looks like maybe we're not going to move, even though we've been planning a move for a year. And we already had an apartment booked and everything. And I came home from work and I said, yeah, I don't think we should move. I mean, I just got this big promotion a year and a half out of college.
Right.
And she's like, well, okay, yeah, you make the choice. It's your thing. And I said, okay. And so, I sat there for a week before I had to put my 2-week notice in. I came back and I said, yeah, we're not going to move. And Jen goes, you sit down right now and write that 2-week notice. You can't do that once you have kids and once everything's established. You can't just.
Right. Yeah. No. So you knew you wanted to have a family and have kids.
Yeah. I always wanted to be a mom.
Oh, okay.
A mom and a teacher were my only two ever.
And So it's like, okay, well, where do you even start to build a network? We moved out there. Jen didn't even have a job. Like we had nothing. It was a total shot in the dark. And so then Jen got offered a job to be a teacher out there. And so things kind of started falling a little bit into place. And then I met a few people and started working on a couple little things here and there. It never really took off, which is part of why we're back here.
Okay.
But, we worked hard and we met a lot of really good people. And
so you mentioned that you both had a pretty deep conversion while you were there in California. Can you tell us your story about that?
So we had lived out in California for almost 10 years. Like we got married and moved. So 10 years into our marriage, we didn't have kids. And all my life, I wanted to be a mom and a teacher. And I was a teacher. And so it was really feeling the pull to be a mom. And so we decided, let's go for it. Let's give it a try. And we achieved a pregnancy on a first shot. And we were so excited. And it actually happened that we were coming home to visit family. And so we planned out all the ways we were going to tell everybody.
Yeah, sure.
I think we gave my mom a card that was written to grandma. And
we just planned all these different ways to, we don't see our family that much. And so we're coming in town and just happened to be that Jen's was child, right?
Yeah.
So we planned all these special ways to tell our families how we were having a baby.
Yeah. So being a teacher on summer vacation and he was working in the film industry, we had like 3 weeks, I think, that we were at home. Yeah. And then when we went back, it was time to go to see the doctor. And at the appointment, they determined it was an ectopic pregnancy. And so we were not able to have that child. It also brought an important conversation between the two of us because Dave kind of said, we need to get our house in order. We need to get our things together. And so I think it was our CIA at the time, but it was time to call. And so when I called this time, then I got some information about when the first meeting was. And at that church, the priest was the one that ran the sessions. And so I developed a good relationship with Father Olin. And every week I would go in ready to ask him the question that was going to unravel the whole thing. And every week he had an answer. I'm like, oh, all right, fine. I'll use you next week, buddy. He was great. And it was good. I wasn't convinced that it was true, but I was willing to consider that it might be and keep asking and keep looking rather than keep my head in the sand, I guess. And then the following Sunday, when I woke up, I had double vision and my cheek muscle was pulled back really tight and I couldn't relax it. I called Dave and he came in to the room and saw me and I think
it looked like she was having a stroke because her whole it was all back, right?
He was, So he took me to the emergency room and that moment was the end of a 5 or 6 year journey to be diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And so the emergency room doctor got us set up with a neurologist and a steroid treatment the following day to kind of resolve that symptom, which the following day is a Monday. Monday is inquiry. And Dave had talked me off the ledge of I'm out of here the week before. So we went, I had received a treatment, but I still had the double vision and I just sat in the back. I don't think I said a word the whole time. Yeah. And when it was done, I don't remember if we went up to Father Olin or if he came up to us. But basically, I think he was like, "You were quiet." What's going on? Yeah. So we went back to his office. He spent an hour with us talking about the truth about the comment about you can't know Mary without Jesus, like what she was trying to say.
Sure.
And then he offered me the anointing of the sick. And so at that I was like, sure, why not?
Right.
It was beautiful. Dave says that afterwards I said,
You said you felt like you kind of got a hug from Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it was really special because the steroid that I needed was 3 infusions, 3 days in a row. And so it was like I had an experience Monday of receiving this treatment. And then Monday night, I received the anointing of the sick. And then I went back Tuesday for the second infusion, and it was not the same experience.
It wasn't as scary, and it wasn't.
It was palpably different.
Huh.
And
Yeah.
that was just a really, really special gift.
But one of the things that the ER doctor, well, once we started meeting with a neurologist, and she said, you have multiple sclerosis, and you guys, if you're going to have a family, you guys need to get moving. Here. And so now the thing that I don't think we've ever talked about is, so we lived together before we were married. We were using contraception. We used contraception 10 years into our marriage. It just wasn't even something that we considered. Like, it was just, that's just what you do. That's what everyone does. Why not? And so, so she's on this contraception, and then she gets this diagnosis, and the doctor says, well, you guys need to if you're going to have a family, you need to have a family, because MS treatment, it can cause birth defects and all these other things. And so just, you guys need to get moving. Mm-hmm. And so we said, okay, well, so we'll go ahead and I guess try for another baby. Mm-hmm. And when we got pregnant again, very, very easily and very quickly.
Okay.
And that all of that kind of, it's hard to tell, but that whole thing corresponds with Jen going through the RCIA as well. That all of that timing is the same.
Yes.
And so,
I was pregnant with Claire when I was confirmed.
Yeah. And that was Easter 2012. But then, so a week before Claire was born, we get this, it's a relatively streamlined pregnancy, really. Nothing crazy going on. But a week before she was born, we get this phone call that, hey, there's something wrong with your baby. It was a Thursday, and we get this call at night. Hey, there's something wrong with your baby. We need you to come in on Monday. And that's not what you want to hear on a Thursday night over the phone. And so and they kept saying, HIPAA issues. They kept saying, well, we can't really talk to you about it over the phone. We need to see you Monday. And we eventually got out of whoever was calling us, well, so there's something wrong with her face, which is like the worst possible thing to say to an upcoming parent. So anyway, we go into this meeting on Monday, and then they say, okay, well, we can confirm that your daughter is going to be born with a bilateral cleft lip and a complete left palate. And so she was born in September, and then before she's even born, we're meeting with surgeons, and they're talking about the 18 surgeries she's going to have over the course of 20 years, and our heads exploding because how do you even comprehend this as you don't even have a baby in your arms yet, and here you are talking about surgery 20 years down the road. So it was just a really stressful time period, but it was good because Jen had come into the church. We kind of solidified our faith life, and we had something to fall back on. And then the community kind of rallied around us. So anyway, after Claire was born, and we kind of went through some of the surgeries and all that, and he said, well, let's have another baby, because why not? Mm-hmm. We don't want Claire to be alone. And so we had another baby. And then it was during that pregnancy where someone said to us, well, the church doesn't approve of contraception, right? And I'm like, yeah, but all the Catholics do it, so who cares? But it was one of those things, like the way it was said, it kind of stuck with me. And it was it was a worm that I couldn't get out of my head. And so being a stubborn, proud person that I am, this is God's honest truth, what happened. So for about a year, I went through this big search to try to prove the church wrong on the teaching about contraception, up to and including, I actually wrote the Archbishop of Los Angeles, and I wrote what I considered to be the highest ranking bishop in the United States. I wrote both of them. And I said, hey, so, we have 2 children now, and, I need you to give me permission to have a vasectomy because, we're not open to children, and, all these things. And actually the assistant to the bishop in LA called me, and he said, hey, so I wanted to let you know we got your letter. And I was like, oh, great, awesome. And he goes, so interesting case that you made. no, you should look into NFP. And I said, no, I didn't read what I
Wow.
wrote you. And he goes,
Yeah.
no, I did read what you wrote, but you need to look into NFP. And so the,
Huh.
the challenge of this whole thing, I'm going through this whole year of trying to prove the church wrong. And then I finally become convinced, okay, gosh, we have to throw out the pill. And so I forgot to talk to Jen about that journey.
Oh.
And so we are driving home from San Bernardino at this point, and I'm kind of white knuckling the car, and I was like, hey Jen, I need to talk to you about something. And she goes, yeah, whatever, what? And I said, would you listen to a CD? And it was one of those Lighthouse Catholic Media CDs. And so I said, hey, can you just listen to this? Put it in there. It's a half-hour speech, and it's talking about, the truth of contraception and things like that. And so then after that was over, I said, hey, so would you mind listening to another CD? And threw a second CD in. And so then after that was over, and that was the only way I knew how to communicate this to her, because I'm sitting here thinking, my wife has MS. We have a child with a birth defect. We have a second child. We're getting ready to leave California. She's
Okay.
going to think I don't care about her.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
contraception's a responsible thing. I didn't know how to talk to her about it. So I put these CDs in, and after about 5 minutes after the second CD was over, and I'm freaking out because it's very quiet, she goes, Dave, I thought that we had given up everything already, but apparently we haven't. And maybe it's this contraception that we're still hanging on to. Maybe we need to give that up too. And it was just like that. That's how
Wow.
we made the decision. And so that was where we really started looking into, how do you do NFP now, right?
Okay.
So we started looking into that now. That's when we kind of landed back here in Ohio.
Okay.
And so we started taking that a little more seriously and trying to understand all of that outside of just an intellectual understanding of what the church teaches. We wanted to actually understand, how do you apply this in a married life?
So you were able to kind of just embrace natural family planning and able to just implement it. And were there any challenges to? He laughs.
I would say that we embraced it in theory.
Okay.
So like embraced it in theory and practice, but with a bunch of slip ups, because you're trying to like rewire your brain outside of something that right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you develop really bad habits. And so,
Yeah.
we're going from using contraception, and, Jen's kind of basically infertile all the time, versus, oh, now there's this window where you're fertile, and we actually need to be disciplined. And that is a really hard curve to come around. And in practice, it was way more difficult than we thought it would be.
Oh, yeah.
That's
It
one of
is
the
an
things,
art.
like when we're
Yeah.
dealing with engaged couples, we talk about our journey, and we say, if you guys are a couple who is not sexually active, not living together, first of all, good for you for, trying to maintain that atmosphere in your relationship before you're married. And also, this is just going to make things so much easier. We didn't have that road, and it's harder for us because of these reasons. And so, maintain the discipline and learn how to love your future spouse in this way, in the right way, so that later on down the road, that's going to just manifest in different ways. We kind of look at some of those engaged couples and think, man, it's lucky for you. I hope you can learn from our mistakes.
Well, that's the beauty of teaching couple to couple. That's the whole idea behind it, right? You have your particular experiences, and the people, the couples that you talk to benefit from that in a big way.
They do.
You can really identify. They can identify with you and what you went through, because they could be like in the same spot you were.
For sure.
So what was the impetus to start teaching NFP, become teachers?
It was my idea to become a teaching couple, but I think it would have been, it was a couple choice for sure, because we started practicing NFP and learning about how to apply this in our marriage. But then, the thing that Jen likes to talk about is the changes that happened in our marriage that, it went from, so when you're married, it's like, there's this mentality, we're going to do 50-50. And that mentality went away. It went from, we're going to do 50-50 to we're both going to do 100-100. And just that, it sounds so mundane, but just having that different mindset changed everything in our marriage. Right. And so we were seeing all these great benefits, even just in terms of just communicating. If you can talk about TIMS and cervical mucus on a daily basis and talk about, your fertility and infertility and this and that, talking about money and bills is just so, it just doesn't matter. And so our communication became much more deep. And it was kind of seeing all of those benefits that we said, share this with other people. And so we went to our parish and said, hey, we'd like to become a teaching couple. Would you guys support us having a ministry here at the parish? Because we don't have one here. We'll be a teaching couple, you guys. Yeah. And they got behind that. And we said, we really want to focus on engaged couples for sure, but we really want to focus on married couples who have our similar story to get them off of contraception. That was our main focus, to show them how they can actually overcome that in a real practical way, right?
So it sounds like you guys are now working with your archdiocese with their marriage prep program. You said it was called Genesis. Can you give me like a 5-minute commercial for the marriage prep program and why it's beneficial?
Yeah. So again, it was one of those things. I had a friend who was doing that work, and they referred Jen and I to the person who kind of organizes the whole thing. And then Katie's the person who organizes it. She calls us up and says, hey, we'd like for you guys to come in and talk about accepting children lovingly. Apparently you guys have a really good witness. And we said, okay, we'll come in and talk, no problem. And so we kind of like came up with our 40-minute, here's our story. And the Genesis retreat it's a 1-day marriage prep retreat where basically they have just normal couples coming in to talk about the questions before the vows. So do you know what you're saying yes to? And ours is, do you accept children lovingly? Which is like, that's the spine of our entire story. Because, getting back to our marriage prep, my priest cousin, he said, will you accept children? You're going to raise them in the faith. And we're like, oh yes, absolutely. And didn't really think sure.
Well, I always wanted to be a mom. So when he said, will you accept children? I'm like, yes,
course.
I want 2 kids. Of
Absolutely.
Course. That's not the answer to the question. That's placing an order at the counter. That's not accepting children lovingly.
Right. And so that kind of became our talk. And so it was an interesting thing. I want to say this really carefully. I definitely don't mean to brag about this, but this topic is such a hard thing to receive. You're talking to a group of people. Now, some of them may not be living together. Some of them may not be sexually active, but the statistics say many of them are. Yeah. And so we're speaking to basically a hostile room, not hostile, but I mean, you're speaking to a room who just doesn't want to hear what you have to say. And by the way, you should not contracept. And that's our speech. So, we go there. So the speech is very difficult to receive. And at the end of the retreat, the attendees, they fill out a survey. And, oftentimes the accepting children lovingly speech is always rated really, really poorly because it's just something that people don't want to hear. Yeah. And so we gave our first speech, and Katie calls us up a couple of days later and said, hey, so I've got your rating. And I said, what's the rating? What are you talking about? And so she's explaining it's 1 to 5, and 5 is really good and 1 is bad. And she said, this speech is normally in like the 3s. You guys have like a 4.5. And I said, oh, cool. And she goes, no, that's actually like a really big deal because this speech is always just roundly dismissed. And so you guys have something that's worth sharing, and you have a way of sharing it that is reaching people where they need to be met. And so that's where we kind of became a lot more involved in that retreat, because, if God's telling us, hey, talk to people about this topic, who are we to say, no, we're not going to do that? And so we just kind of try to be open to when Katie calls and needs us to give that talk, we try to be available to do it for her.
Wonderful.
And it's been an interesting thing to, the thing that we're sharing is all of our mistakes and how painful our journey has been, but people hear the pain, but then they see the success at the end, and they say, okay, well, if they can do it, maybe we can do it too. And it's been resonant, which is great. We're happy to be able to share that and have it be received by people in that way.
It's really been refreshing to see how many couples are eager to learn.
The compliment of, you guys have kind of encouraged me to look more deeply into it. That's a great compliment, because they're coming in there with the wall up, and we're able to teach, or we're able to speak, and they're going to reconsider, which is we can't ask for more than that. And I mean, shoot, if in a room of 100, 150 couples, if one texts and says, or contacts or reviews and says, hey, you caused me to consider this a little bit more deeply, that's a great thing. You're going for the one, right?
The other thing that I see a lot when I pull couples is the woman who is on birth control, but it's because her doctor slapped it on to deal with whatever other thing was going on. And so when they sit down with me in the room, the first thing that they'll say is, I'm on the pill and I went off, because we're not told all of that. No. This will solve all of your problems. And so great, solve all of my problems and move. And then when they're in the first class and they hear just what that's doing to them, so many are eager for options. And so then we can refer them to doctors with like nephro-technologies and things like that to help them to actually treat whatever the problem is. And
get to the root.
Down the line, when they are ready to try to achieve a pregnancy, they don't have to deal with whatever has been hiding all that time. You can get all of that squared away, straightened out.
Have you been able to teach with the PeakDay app?
And one thing about the app, Jen said that I'm kind of not the easygoing one. It's true. So CCL comes out with the app before PeakDay was called CyclePro Go. And so, we were using that as students and then as a teaching couple. And just to make sure, because I want to make sure that we're being thorough, I probably downloaded 5 or 6 other fertility tracking apps. And, so in my opinion, CyclePro Go was easily the best of everything out there. I was comparing it against like the algorithm and how it calculates the stuff that it's trying to give you. And just the programming of CyclePro Go is just so good. And so, that's one of the things I say to our students that, in my opinion, and I'm not saying this because we teach for CCL, I'm saying this because this is what I really believe. This is the best app out there. Now, the reason I'm saying that is we teach them to do the paper while they're in the class, because a computer program, inherently has limitations because it's a computer program. If you don't understand the way that the algorithm works, how are you going to understand what your body's doing when it's not telling you you're in phase 3 because of a 0.1 temperature thing, right? You need to actually look at it on a paper level to understand what it means. But the app is phenomenal. Like that. So, putting the new skin over CyclePro Go, user friendly. I mean, it's a great app. And so we definitely encourage people to use it for sure.
What is it that you like the most when you are teaching natural family planning to another engaged couple?
The thing that I like best about teaching for the couple to couple week is it's ministry that we can serve in together.
Yeah.
Because when we're serving together, we're growing closer together as a couple. And I've seen a lot of couples where he does his thing and she does her thing. And I really enjoy serving together.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much, Jen and Dave, for sharing your lovely witness and your eventful journey. So it will be very appreciated by, those who are watching the podcast. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing for engaged couples as well.
Thanks for calling us and giving us the opportunity to, talk about what we do.